All right, moving right along. Chapter 3, Good Manufacturing Practices and Other Prerequisite Programs that we might use for my preventive control for human food requirements. So remember, this class is about 21 CFR 117 in general. It's more specifically on subpart C. Well, this chapter would be about subpart B. This chapter is about 21 CFR 117 subpart B, which is the current good manufacturing practices. You're probably going to want to throw a few other things with that. Set up your foundation real nice, so when you bring in the food, start processing, you'll be in a good place. Chapter 3. Dave Rossin back in the house. So remember, we got these learning objectives. Each chapter we lay out some things we hope you learn. In this chapter, we hope you learn more about. If you don't know about, we want you to learn about. If you already know a little bit about, we want you to learn more about good manufacturing practices. Things like 21 CFR 117 subpart B requirements. They're all laid out. The personnel, the plant and the grounds. There's a copy of it in the class resources. Make sure you take a look at that. The class resources are loaded up for you. Tons of things to read and look at if you really want to get good at this stuff. The class is rated at 20 hours, but heck, if you read all those resources, you might be here 16 weeks with all the stuff I've given you. So back to the lecture. This chapter covers GMPs, covers prerequisite programs, and how important they are in the scheme of this whole thing. Remember, we're creating a system. And we got to have all these parts of our system working together. Remember, if the esophagus is not working, when I swallow my food, it won't go down my esophagus down to my stomach. So I got a problem there. So we want to remember things like that. Okay, so we're creating this system. And then again, I've attached already the regulation itself, but we've got some great resources in the chapter. It's going to be important you spend some time, if you don't already know them, all the terminology, the acronyms within the definitions. So a couple for this chapter that are important is prerequisite programs. What are those? Well, procedures, including GMPs. Yeah, including GMPs that provide for the basic environmental operating conditions necessary to support my food safety plan. If I don't have these things going on, looking at the people, looking at the environment, then when I bring the food in, we've got big problems. So we're going to have these prerequisite programs to cover things like the water, like the surfaces, like personnel hygiene, like just overall maintenance of the plant. We'll cover that in detail. So your food safety system, okay, are going to be, depending on your hazard analysis, depending on your facility, are going to be the things that you need, right? What we're going to need to implement. Part of it's going to be our plan. Part of it's going to be our prerequisite programs. Remember, we're creating a system. Prerequisite programs, preventive controls, recall plan, training, things like that. These components create a system. So here they are. This is a pretty important slide. So just get this in your head right now. If you don't already know about this, there's something called good manufacturing practices. It's federal law for the basic sanitary standards for a facility that processes, packs, holds foods. It even carries over into transportation. When I look at the transportation regulation, 21 CFR 1 subpart O, it says this regulation applies in addition to 117. 117 subpart B covers elements of transportation. So these are the highlights of each section there. You're going to want to make sure you go through. The section covering your personnel. The section covering the plant and the grounds. The section covering sanitary operations. Now what they've done here is highlighted a couple sections that with the thinking now with this PC rule, the preventive control for human food rule, is that the nature of the sanitary nature of the operation could impact the safety of the food. If we don't manage the sanitary nature of the particular product, then that product could be then labeled adulterated or considered adulterated, All right, so that may carry over into my food safety plan as a preventive control. Now, the sanitary facilities and control, these are going to be my day-to-day activities. We're going to cover these in detail in the requirements under 117 subpart B. Equipment and utensils, another section. Processes and controls. There it is again. Probably gonna come over into preventive controls. Warehousing, distribution, human holding human food byproducts for animal food. So this is stuff you're going to send off to the people that make animal food, animal feed. Those folks are subject to 21 CFR 507, but they have a burden to make sure that the things they're getting in are held in a sanitary nature. So you're going to need to make sure you're handling those in a way to even if they don't check, that if they do check, you got it covered. And then defect action level, that's pretty interesting stuff. How much mold, how many rat turds or insect parts are allowed? We got to make sure we have a program for that. Defect action levels. Training. So training is wasn't in 21 CFR 110, which is not covered in this course, was the old GMP. Everybody's subject to 117 subpart B, now the new GMP. But training wasn't covered in 110. It was recommended. But training's required now. So individuals who are part of the processing, packing, holding, and food need to have training in. You can see it there, hygiene and food safety. We need records for that. Supervisors are going to be held responsible for that too. So the people working under you, you need to make sure that they know hygiene for their job. They know food safety for their job. And you want to make sure you document that. Someone's going to be coming around asking for that. The regulation that covers that, the specific part is 117 subpart A. 117 subpart A. I hope you're taking notes. So this chapter is on subpart B for the most part, but subpart A covers training. And then remember, the course is for subpart C for the most part. Hopefully you're taking notes. All right, we're looking at 21 CFR 117.10. Remember, this is the chapter on GMP's prerequisite program. So we're making our way through 117 right now. We're going to look at each section. Section 10, 117.10 covers personnel. So this should be easy to understand for you, but let's just go through. I'll just take a quick second look at some of these. Obviously, someone with an open wound, a boil, an injury that could be infected or is infected or appears infected, either by supervisory examination or by a medical examination. We need to restrict that person. If they're, have diarrhea, vomiting, hepatitis A, salmonella typhi, this person needs to be restricted. So we got to make sure that people know how to wash their hands, where to wash their hands, when to wash their hands. So these would be things that you could break down individually and actually conduct training sessions on. Because we need to train our staff, supervisors. That's probably you more than likely, because you're taking this Pcqi class. Preventive controls, qualified individuals, are management, leadership, ownership. They're going to be making sure the people underneath them know how to wash their hands. So how long do we make bubbles? We're going to cover that. So personal cleanliness, personal hygiene. While you're on duty, you need to perform. You need to do things a certain way. When you're at home, obviously you can do things different. So if you're using reusable gloves or single-use gloves, how do we use those? How do we maintain those? In the case of reusable, how do we maintain those? Single-use, when do we take those off? When do we change those? After a task? How about our garments? A garment can become a food contact surface. An apron can become a food contact surface. So are we allowed to wear any jewelry? No. So we got to train folks to take that stuff off. Having hair restraints, hats. We want to make sure we're covering those areas. How about our cell phone, our personal items, storing those, keeping them away from food. So we want to make sure when to eat, where to eat. Those things will be important. Even when you're talking about eating, we want to make sure if they are eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on their break, peanut butter, the sandwich, the wheat, got a couple allergens there, peanut allergen, wheat allergen, that they're properly washing their hands, that they're not bringing it back to work. So even when we're looking at our personnel, we're looking at things like cross contact, cross contamination. 21 CFR 117 subpart B 117.10 section 117.10. It's our personnel. The management of the facility needs to take precautions, needs to make sure they're checking out their people. I worked as a banquet chef back a long time ago. We're talking early 1990s in a big hotel in downtown Los Angeles. And every morning we would line up and we would basically present our hands and be checked out by the executive chef. We were doing pretty large scale banquets, 3,000, 5,000 people. So if the chef had seen something like this, a hand like this, perhaps the person was infected with the Pcqi virus, which is known to be transferable through feces to other individuals. Not a major virus that we hear about, like norovirus or hepatitis A, but these are the things we're looking for. We're looking for boils and wounds and cuts on the hands. These cuts, these wounds could be places where Staphylococcus aureus could harbor and grow and then easily transfer to food. If you're working with something like a ready-to-eat food, Staphylococcus aureus gets in there, could then produce toxins in there, and boy, we have some serious problems. These enterotoxins produced by that bacteria are pretty tough to get rid of, and the bacteria itself is pretty tough. So you want to be mindful of your personnel. Making our way through subpart B, 117 subpart B, 117.20, section 117.20 covers plant and grounds. So this is your checklist right here. What you want to do is go through each section. In this case, section 117.20, plant and grounds. You want to go through each item. You want to take a look. How are you doing with regard to debris and unused equipment and uncut vegetation? Do you have trees leaning over on the building? Do you have equipment that's just hanging around that could be unsanitary, unsafe, that could be brought back into use by an untrained individual? You want to make sure, of course, we have proper drainage of the grounds. You're going to have some activities to do after the lecture, and some of the activities are going to be looking at the picture and then responding what the picture reveals. So you're going to see the drain clogged. That's going to be an issue. If the drain's clogged, we got standing water. We got pests like water. So we want to make sure we're managing that. So got to think about areas like waste disposal and how's our space to operate, because if you're too tight, then chances of cross contamination, cross contact could be a problem, or you start storing things on the floor because you don't have enough shelf space. So we want to make sure that we have separation between certain activities, certain ingredients, certain processes to prevent cross contamination, cross contact. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the walls, the ceilings, the floors in a proper order. We want to make sure that if there is condensation or drip, which we want to prevent, or if it does happen, we immediately try to remedy that, or make sure these things, if they do happen, that the product is not affected by these things. So we want to make sure we have adequate lighting so that we can carry out our cleaning, carry out our inspection processes, carry out processing. We want to make sure that things like light bulbs and glass are shatter resistant or covered. We want to minimize these type of glass or material if possible in production areas. If they are there, again, protect them from breaking. We want to make sure that we have good airflow. We want to make sure we're managing the plant and the grounds in a way that when we bring in the product or we move product in the plant and the grounds, it's not impacted by contaminated air. We want to make sure that we don't let the pest in, so we have doors or air curtains, or we have self-closing doors. The holes are covered. We want to make sure we're managing this stuff. So you can see here a clogged drain. Clogged drain outside in the waste area would be a place where pests would perhaps come to get sustenance, food and water, not as picky as maybe perhaps you and I. But this is obviously unsanitary. Would invite pests. Pests then get this close to the building, could then maybe make their way inside the building. So we want to make sure even outside the building, in the trash area, in the drain areas, that we maintain these things. You got a clogged drain here. So a couple areas when it comes to lighting, we want to make sure, number one, we have adequate lighting, so enough light, and then secondarily, we protect from glass breakage. So we want to make sure that we have shatter-resistant bulbs or covers over our lighting to prevent a scenario where that glass would end up in the food, which would be a significant problem for our facility. Making our way through the GMPs. GMPs have different sections. Section 11735, sanitary operations. Got to make sure the plant's in good repair. Got to make sure we're cleaning and sanitizing as necessary to prevent cross-contamination or cross-contact. We want to make sure the chemicals that we use are actually safe for use and we're using them the right way. So some type of point of use policy on the chemicals, hopefully. We want to make sure that these chemicals are stored in a way where it won't impact food. We want to make sure that we properly use them, properly store them, and we want to make sure that we then are properly labeling them if that's the case as well. So we want to make sure part of this whole sanitary operation that we have pest control, so don't let them in. If they get in, we want to make sure there's a way to destroy them or kill them, and making sure it's not attractive. So that would mean clean, sanitary, so hopefully they don't get in. And we want to make sure, again, our cleaning policy encompasses our food contact surfaces, our utensils. We want to make sure we're operating in a way that's sanitary before, during, after use. Even non-food contact surfaces are incidental contact or secondary food contact surfaces. We want to make sure we're looking at those things. We want to make sure that we have single service or single use things, that we're protecting those against contamination. We want to make sure that our equipment, our utensils, are maintained, cleaned, and sanitized in a manner to prevent against contamination or being recontaminated during storage or non-use. We want to make sure we're storing them in a way to prevent that. Well, what's wrong with this picture? Well, we got some white and brown sugar. It says here on the slide. Problem is, looks like it's in a cleaning area, an area where we're cleaning dishes. We have some different chemicals there. So either improperly producing food in an improper area or improper storage of chemicals. I'm not sure. So yeah, maybe it's food in the prep area or prepping in the cleaning area. But we got a problem here either way. So what's wrong with this picture? Improper storage of chemicals. So we want to make sure our food contact surfaces, these are surfaces that are coming in direct contact with the food, utensils, cutting boards, things of that nature, certain equipment, that they're meeting certain criteria. You know, there's kind of an industry standard for some equipment. You got your NSF or National Sanitation Foundation type equipment. Those things are smooth and easy to clean. They can be cleaned. They can be sanitized. They will be cleaned and sanitized in a way to prevent cross-contamination, cleaned in a way to prevent cross-contact. That's going to be important, that we know our cleaning processes achieve a total removal of allergenic proteins and a reduction of pathogenic organisms during the cleaning process too, if need be. So we want to make sure, again, that this cleaning is so robust that we don't have to worry about it. But there might be some scenarios where maybe we have a ready-to-eat food exposed to the environment, that our cleaning and our programs involved in cleaning could be a scenario where it makes its way into our food safety plan. Not just an element of our GMPs, but also a part of our preventive control program. So we want to make sure that we understand in scenarios where there's allergen cross-contact scenario or environmental pathogen, maybe in an area where ready-to-eat foods exposed to the environment prior to packaging, we want to make sure that we have a program covering that. All right, here we go again. What's wrong with this picture? Guy's working hard. Sees busting suds everywhere in there. But we got a problem. Got a problem here. Cleaning the apron real good, but on the floor. And over the drain. Couple problem areas there. Floor is number one, but drains, sometimes we got problems there too. So we want to make sure not only do they clean, but they clean the right way. Clean the right way. So that's going to be an important component of what we do. Training. So if you got somebody doing training, cleaning, excuse me, we want to make sure we got some training covering on how to clean, when to clean, where to clean, and the proper chemical usage when cleaning, those type of things like that. So we want to make sure we cover that. Section 117.37, sanitary facilities and controls, covers water, plumbing, drainage, sewage. How's your toilet facilities? You got toilet? You got toilet paper, running water, sewage? All those things are going to be important. How's your hand washing? Do you have adequate facilities? Water, soap, towels, way to dry hands? You want to make sure that we're going through each, again, line by line, section by section through 117 subpart B. This is going to be your prerequisite programs. These are your GMPs. These go on 24/7, 365. How's your trash movement and handling? You want to make sure we got programs for all this. So let's take a look at a few things specifically here. All right, let's keep this thing going here. So where's your water coming from anyway? Got to make sure you have safe water. Remember, we're looking at 21 CFR 117, particularly subpart B here, our good manufacturing practices. So we're looking at water safety now. You got to think of a couple areas here for sure. Well, I think 3 areas. You got to know where the water's coming from. How are you managing the water once you receive it? How's your plumbing? How's your fixtures? How's your potential for cross connection? How are you managing the water when you have it? And then what are you doing with the water? Are you using it as a food ingredient? Are you making ice with it? You want to make sure you know all the details to your water. 21 CFR 117 subpart B tells me I gotta have good water, and particularly the section that covers that. My water is in 117.37. Remember that this is under my sanitary facilities. All right, so what do you see here? What's wrong with this picture? Pretty easy to notice. We've got some leaks, some holes. We've got some issues here. Back in one of my first job I ever had, working for Taco Bell back in 1984. Yeah, 1984. Just dated myself. Yes, I know. One of the policies back then, one of the procedures that we had to adhere to was a wet sink was a dirty sink. So if we had leaks like that were leaving excess water on the sink or near the sink, it would create a source of water for the pest. So we want to make sure we're taking care of things like leaky faucets, holes in the sink. Remember, this section's covering my facility and the sanitary nature of my facility. Yeah, so you got to make sure that people know how to wash their hands. We talked about training earlier, but we got to know where to wash our hands. We got to make sure that hand washing station is adequately stocked with soap and paper towels and proper water, and the temperature of the water is going to be important. Signs also help remind people how to wash hands. So you want to make sure that you remember that folks need to wash their hands after a lot of activities, not every single activity, but we need to train folks with that. It turns out that even healthy people could carry pathogens, and we from my studies, I learned that the average worker, food service worker, food handler, food manufacturing worker does 9 activities an hour. 9 an hour that require hand washing. So we want to make sure that we're training folks proper hand washing, where, when, how, all that good stuff. Hand washing stations. And of course, make sure our toilet facilities are maintained, clean, sanitary. It's going to be very important. We want to make sure we have proper sewage disposal of the waste. So these are, again, areas that you're going to want to make sure you go through the section, you go to each line item, make sure that you have these things in place. Hand washing, hand sanitizing, and toilet facilities. So here we go again. What's wrong with this picture? Well, if your bathroom looks like this, employees or not, we got problems. We want to make sure that the toilet is adequately cleaned, that we want to make sure that the trash has been removed. This is a potential source for pathogenic organisms like norovirus, salmonella, E. coli, listeria. That's for sure going to be present in some bathroom that looks like this. Kind of reminds me of my journeys as traveling, that sometimes tourists come across a bathroom that looks like this and you have to use it. We don't want that for our we don't want FDA coming in. We don't want USDA coming in. We don't want our auditors coming in. We don't want to use a bathroom like this. I hope not. So we want to make sure our bathrooms are adequately cleaned. What's wrong with this picture? Well, got a dirty mirror, that's for sure. Got bar soap. Got, looks like food near the sink. Got a colander in the sink. I mean, it goes on and on and on of the problems here. So I remember when I was a young boy, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was very, very adamant, very strict with regard to where you wash your hands. And it never resonated with me until much later, as I started studying food safety, food science, the importance of having a dedicated sink for hand washing. In the case of my grandmother's house, that would have been the bathroom sink, not the kitchen sink. So you want to make sure that you wash your hands in a certain area. We're producing food in a food prep area, not in a hand washing sink. It would not be okay to wash out or store or have anything near a hand, because we're washing off pathogens from our hand. Where this area would more than likely be an area where pathogens could be. So we want to make sure we're mindful of that. How's my hand washing sink? All right, moving into the next section. Section 11740 covers my equipment and my utensils. They got to be in good condition. If they're in good condition, then they're cleanable. So we need to make sure that all food contact and non-food contact surfaces are maintained, clean, sanitized as necessary to prevent adulteration, right? To prevent cross-contamination, cross-contact. Don't forget, we've got cross-contamination, the transfer of microbial and chemical. And then we got cross-contact, which is specific to allergenic proteins, the transfer of allergenic proteins. So we want to make sure we're managing, cleaning, sanitizing in a way to prevent those things. We want to make sure that our surfaces are non-absorbent, corrosion resistant. We want to make sure that if we're using gas or air, that it's properly filtered. How's my storage devices, my refrigerator? How's my freezer? How's the cleanliness? How's the temperature? Do I have a way of checking the temperature? Do we check the accuracy of that device? Do we calibrate that device? We want to make sure we're on top of our equipment and our utensils. So when I go to store the food there, I don't have to worry about the device that's already been taken care of in these prerequisite, these GMP programs. So this is a big area right here. Matter of fact, it starts stepping into the process where GMPs cover our processes and controls. GMPs cover our processes and controls. That's not just solely covered under HACCP or solely covered under the PC rule. The lower level foundational coverage, GMPs, covers processes and controls. So when you go to this section 11780, it's deep. It's got overall general requirements. It talks about the raw materials, our operations. It talks about, food that can support the rapid growth of undesirable microorganisms must be held at temperatures to prevent that from becoming contaminated. It covers the source of our ingredients, that are coming to us. Where are we getting these things? Raw materials and other ingredients must be inspected and segregated or otherwise handled as necessary to ascertain that they are clean and suitable for processing. So I want you to make sure you deep dive into 11780. 11780. Remember, just in case you forgot what we're doing here, we're looking at 21 CFR 117 subpart B. Now this document, this regulation, is the foundation for this PC rule, for this preventive control for human food regulation, which is the 117 regulation. Remember, there's a lot of parts: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. A is going to cover my training. B is going to cover my GMP. C, that's where we get into the hazard analysis, food safety plan, and the components there. So we're laying this thing out for you. Within B and C are going to cover processes and controls. Some of it's going to be good enough under B. Sometimes that's not good enough. It ends up in my food safety plan because I got a hazard. Hope I didn't confuse things. Processes and controls. So let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit more. Processes and controls, first area, raw materials and ingredients. So we want to make sure that the materials, the ingredients that come in there, they're suitable for food. They're safe, they're sanitary. Well, it means we're putting a burden on our supplier. That means we're putting standards on our supplier. We're making sure our suppliers are meeting these FDA regulations. We're making sure that we receive, we store, we handle these raw materials in a way to prevent contamination, prevent cross-contact, prevent deterioration. So we're following it from the boat to the throat. We're managing this stuff. GMPs, 21 CFR 117 subpart B, section 11780 covers my raw materials and ingredients. So what's wrong here? What's wrong with this picture? So I sell some pita chips and I like to store them in trash bags. Would that be okay? Rhetorical question. So you want to make sure you understand that even the container, we got to protect the food from contamination, which would mean the container needs to be made in a way to prevent that. The package needs to not deteriorate. The package needs to be in good condition. It needs to protect the food that's inside. So this is stuff that's covered under 11780 again. We want to make sure that, of course, our packages are protecting the food, okay, in production, which would be, this is more than likely after production, after cooking the chips, cooling the chips, packing, holding maybe for a repack. Who knows what's going on in this facility, but it's wrong. It's just wrong. So we're still making our way through GMPs. We're still looking at processes and controls, 11780. There's a big section right here, though. So remember, when we go to the section is 11780, processes and controls. Within there, we're going to have paragraphs, paragraph A, paragraph B, paragraph C. Paragraph C covers manufacturing operations. It talks about my equipment and my utensils and the food that I like, it gets deep. 11780 C3 again says food that can support the rapid growth of undesirable microorganisms must be held at temperatures to prevent that food from becoming adulterated during manufacturing, processing, packing, and holding. Manufacturing, processing, packing, and holding include transporting, receiving, segregating, sorting, those type of things as well. So GMPs 117 dips into those operations too. But you can see here it talks about, when you get there, it talks about how we cook, irradiate, pasteurize, our rework process, our water, the manufacture of the water. Again, we talked about the manufacture of ice, we talked about the water earlier, but are we making ice in a safe way? We want to make sure that we are, during manufacturing, during processing, during packing and holding, that we are preventing cross-contamination, cross-contact, the transfer of allergenic proteins. Remember, we got nine major food allergens here in the United States. Let me remind you what those are again. We got fish, we got crustaceans, shellfish, peanuts, tree nuts, wheat, soy, eggs, milk, and sesame. So we got to prevent allergen cross-contact. So this section is pretty short and sweet. Warehousing and distribution. We're looking at 11793, section 11793, warehousing, distribution. Short and sweet. Storage. Let me just read it from the regulation for you. Storage and transportation of food must be under conditions that will protect against allergen cross-contact and against biological, chemical, including radiological and physical contamination of food, as well as against deterioration of the food and the container. So they laid out the bullet points fine. Just read the regulation for you. Section 11793, 21 CFR 117 subpart B, GMP regulation. So animal food has to be safe enough for you to eat. Animal feed, animal food, 21 CFR 507 protects that now. And we want to make sure that what happens is facilities sometimes have byproducts they'll sell off to animal food facilities, or maybe they're just getting raw materials directly for that facility too. So I mean, there's other business models, but this one here is more or less covering byproducts, things that we're not making human food with. We have some scraps or some less desirable cuts, perhaps, that we're selling off to animal food facilities. We got to maintain those in a sanitary manner. 21 CFR 117-95 covers that, holding and distribution of human food byproducts for use as animal food. Interesting stuff. All right, well, last but not least, 117-110. Remember, we've been making our way through 21 CFR 117 subpart B. I hope I didn't lose you. Hope you're staying with me. This is going to be your foundation. You ever notice that a foundation on a house says doesn't get time off? Foundation on a building, no time off. Working 24/7, 365. Got to be there. Got to be good. Foundation's got to be good. So when you're building your HACCP house, when you're building your preventive control for human food house, you're building, make sure your foundation is based on 117 subpart B. When you're making your pizza, that's your dough, right? Your foundation is your dough. All right, you want to make sure your dough, 117 subpart B, is in good shape. All right, so one of the things we got to look at, last but not least, is defect action level. How many rat turds are allowed in this ingredient? Insect parts, mold, filth. Some of these things are allowed. So we got what's called the defect action level handbook. I put it in the class resources for you. Check it out. Look up something. Look up one of the ingredients you work with. See if there is a defect action level. Turns out these levels are, in theory, unavoidable. They're there. It's naturally occurring things. If we had a standard stricter than some of these levels, we wouldn't have some of these ingredients, some of these commodities. So that's your burden under GMPs, is to make sure that the ingredients come in and they do not exceed what we call defect action levels. Take a look at that defect action level handbook in the class resources. You'll probably have enough coverage if you go line by line, section by section in the GMP regulation. But you want to build out this system, remember. You got a system, a group of interworking parts or things that work together to create a whole. So there's some recommendations here for some additional programs, policies, procedures covering maybe our zoning, hygienic zoning. And this would be pretty much a best practice or a standard you want to have if you're in the ready-to-eat business. So you're producing ready-to-eat foods exposed to the environment prior to packaging. You want to have a hygienic zoning scenario going on. So you might need a supply chain program within your food safety plan, but even if you don't, you should still have some type of supply program, some type of specifications, some kind of standards that you make sure each supplier meets. You got to keep your equipment in good shape, good condition. Here's the scenario where I would make sure I worked with each equipment manufacturer. They'll more than less tell you what you need to do, when to do it, how to do it, maintenance, calibration, accuracy checks. You want to create policy procedures for that, all my equipment, cleaning schedule. I like signage and color coding or using allergen icons and things like that to help separate things to minimize cross-contamination, cross-contact scenarios. And then you're the expert. You know best. You probably already got a lot of this stuff going on. What other specific type prerequisite programs might fit for your facility? You know, a lot of things are already required in the training and the reportable symptoms, but we want to create programs to where we got coverage of everything. So when I bring the food in, all I got to do is focus on the food, making good food, safe food, because we're not worried about the table, the people, the water, the air, the environment. Don't forget 21 CFR 117 subpart B, that's your baby. And then you might need some extra programs to kind of bolster that thing up. So yeah, this business ain't necessarily easy, this food safety stuff alone by itself, but we still got to deal with the city, the county. We got these food defense, biosecurity requirements, okay? We've got nutrition labeling recently updated. We got to look at economic fraud. You got EPA, USDA maybe coming in your facility. Maybe you're working with other foods like seafood. Maybe you're making juice. Maybe you're a dual facility, USDA, FDA, dealing with those type of things. Or you're importing or exporting products overseas. Maybe you're also in the animal food or animal feed business. You're handling produce. You got to make sure you know about these other regulations. Let me cover a couple. Seafood 21 CFR 123, juice 21 CFR 120. You get into USDA regulations for meat and poultry. Those are under 9 CFR USDA regulations. Preventive control for animal food 21 CFR 507. Produce safety regulation 21 CFR 112. Sanitary transportation of human and animal food 21 CFR 1 subpart O. We got a major one coming up here pretty soon, 21 CFR 1 subpart S. Subpart S. That's traceability regulation. It's coming into effect in 2026. You might want to start working on that stuff. So I'd say that's a deep dive. I'd say we went through pretty good. But you're the expert. You need to go back through there line by line, item by item, paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence through that regulation, 21 CFR 117 subpart B. Does it apply to you? If it does apply to you, do you have a policy, a procedure, a program mandating how you do it, when you do it, why you do it, all that stuff? So don't forget these GMPs, these prerequisite programs are my foundation. If I got this stuff going on, I got a better chance of producing safe, wholesome food than if I don't have it going on. And that's what if the FDA finds you slipping in this area, they can condemn the food just as much as if they find you slipping in another regulation. All right, so remember the FDA is an enforcement agency, part of the executive branch of the government. GMPs are going to be more or less required for your facility. Okay, at a minimum, you're going to have GMP and training. You're going to have GMPs training. You may not even need a food safety plan. It's possible. It's possible. You got to do the hazard analysis. But GMPs aren't possible. They're required. Make sure you make that happen. All right. So there's a couple things you want to make sure you want to do for this chapter and all subsequent chapters. But for chapter 3, make sure you check out all the attachments, the reading material, case studies, templates, examples I provided in the resources. Don't forget to do your quiz. There's going to be, I reminded you earlier in the lecture, you're going to look at some pictures, tell me what's wrong with the picture. They're just reviews of the slides. Appreciate you coming to my class, taking part in the self-paced class. If you have any questions, reach out anytime. I'm pretty easy to find. But all the material covers this stuff really well. Go back through the manual, through the reading, additional readings. Thanks again. Get that hand.